Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We will just wait a few moments to allow more people to connect and join in. Thanks for connecting on time, and it's really a pleasure to see you here today. All right, so we'll get started. We'll allow more people to join as they're free. But hi, and thank you for connecting with us, and welcome to the UN Library and Archives Geneva. My name is Natalie Alexander, and I work here at the Library and Archives, specifically for what we call the Knowledge and Learning Commons, or the Commons. And this is really our space at the Library and Archives dedicated to kind of sharing knowledge and discussing questions around multilateralism. And so we're really happy to be with you today for this online session, which you can see on the screen is called Discovering Multilateralism, Explore Primary Sources on Multilateralism from the League of Nations to the UN. And we know there are many of you joining us from the University of Galați in Romania. With thanks to your professors who have set up this session for you, but also from other universities. There are also students here, including from the University of Geneva. So a big welcome to you all. And thanks for taking the time, especially in December, as you all get ready for holidays as well. As many of you are actually joining us from Romania at the University of Galați, we wanted to ask Professor Tudor to give us a few words of welcome. And so we know we have Professor Tudor in the audience. I'm just going to allow you to speak and to have your camera on. And you're welcome to say a few words and also explain why it was important to set up this session for your students. So Professor Tudor, you have the floor. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear. Yeah, thank you.
Excellent. Hello, everyone. To those in Geneva and my younger colleagues from Galați, Romania. The students of our faculty who are connected today are from the law and public administration specialization, from bachelor's and master's studies. I'm delighted to open this session where we have the rare opportunity to learn directly from the experts from the United Nations Library and Archives Geneva. The reason this session is so important is simple. Access to knowledge is power, is my opinion. Understanding how to navigate primary sources and databases is critical, especially when studying something as vital and dynamic as multilateralism. On the other hand, Romania attaches essential importance to multilateralism and the need to streamline international cooperation and the action of international organizations, including the commitment to partners with whom it shares similar visions of the international level. All this represent guidelines to be followed to achieve Romania's foreign policy objectives. Let not forget that Romania actively participates in the League of Nations, the precursor of the United Nations organization, especially with the appointment of the Romanian Minister of the Foreign Affairs, Nicolae Titulescu, to its leadership. Titulescu's ideas had a major impact on our public opinion. His concern for defining the concept of peace and finding the means of maintaining it can be found in most of his speeches, in the interviews he gave in various notes transmitted in the country, in his capacity as a diplomat, as Minister of Foreign Affairs, or as a president of the League of Nations Assembly. By working with the librarians and archivists today, you'll gain practical skills and deeper appreciation for the wealth and information available. These materials underpin global decision-making and international collaboration, and learning how to access them will empower you to think critically and contribute meaningfully to academic and professional discussions on these topics. I hope you make the most of this of this opportunity, ask lots of questions, and leave inspired to explore further. Let's begin to exciting journey together. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Tudor, for that and for sharing a bit about the history also of Romania and their involvement in multilateralism. You mentioned something very critical, which is access to knowledge. And this is exactly why we're here today. So our goal is to really help you to understand how you can access and research multilateralism through the primary sources we have here at the Library and Archives. And that's what we're going to get into today, from the League of Nations, of course, to the UN. And before we kind of dive in, I'll introduce you to our speakers. We wanted to firstly look at how we define multilateralism. What does it mean? And give you a brief introduction to the UN system so that we set off on a good foot before we kind of get into the grits of it. So here on the screen, you see a slide about what is multilateralism. If we look at it really from a quantitative definition, it is really a form of cooperation between at least 3 states. But often it goes beyond this quantitative definition. And another way we can define it is the coordinated action of multiple countries pursuing common goals. And we do actually have a research guide here at the Library and Archives on multilateralism that really delves into these definitions, the principles on which multilateralism is based, and we'll share that with you in the resources after the session. We really encourage you to consult that if you'd like to know more. The former League of Nations and the UN are organizations that are examples of multilateral institutions and places where multilateral diplomacy and action take place. And so today, our speakers are going to be sharing the main types of documents produced by these organizations, which really highlight their actions multilaterally, which then become a study as primary resources, which is what we're here for today. So we know that many of you are coming from the University of Galați, and we now understand that a lot of you are in bachelor's and master's, but we wanted to get to know you a little bit more. And so we're going to launch a little poll to ask you about why you're interested in researching multilateralism. You'll see on the screen now that the poll, is it mostly for your university studies or maybe your thesis that you're looking for these kinds of resources? Are you simply curious about multilateralism, or maybe there's another reason? And if you do have another reason, please don't hesitate to share with us in the Q&A section, or to post it in the Q&A section, the reasons why you're here. But you can simply choose one of those options and go ahead and click send, and we'll take a look at the results. Here we go. We've got a few coming in. So there's still time to respond if you'd like to tell us why you're interested in researching multilateralism. Good. So most of you, of course, are here for your university studies, but also a good many are just simply curious about multilateralism. Thank you for participating. We'll have a few more polls later on, so please stay tuned for that. We also wanted to briefly help you to understand the Secretariat. Perhaps you're very aware of the UN system, but just to give you a brief introduction to the Secretariat, here on the screen now, you're going to see an organogram of the UN Secretariat. So just on the next slide. And you likely know some of the main organs of the UN, like the General Assembly and the Security Council. You often hear about these in the news. And another main organ is the UN Secretariat, which is really there to carry out the day-to-day work of the UN. We are part of the Secretariat in the Library and Archives. And this work is mandated by the General Assembly and the other UN's main organs. The Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, is the head of the Secretariat. And there are staff members working in duty stations around the world. What we really wanted to highlight to you is that we are part of the UN in Geneva. The headquarters of the Secretariat is in New York, but there are 3 major offices outside of headquarters, Geneva being one of them. So you'll see on the screen a little red circle around the UN office at Geneva, and this is where we sit. If we look at the Library and Archives in particular, on the next screen, you'll see that I think there's one, thank you. You'll see there a few pictures, some in black and white and some in color. And that's simply because the library has been here a very long time, more than 100 years. It was founded as the Library of the League of Nations in 1919. It is a key reference library on international relations, and our library has a range of resources that are open to you. We have documents, books, ebooks, journals, covering all aspects of the work of the UN since 1946. But importantly, we're not just a library, but also an archives. And we house the archives of UN Geneva, the League of Nations, international peace movements, and more. And our speakers are going to share much more about that. So really, this is just to help you get an understanding of who we are before we launch in. But it's now my pleasure to introduce you to our speakers who are here for you. On the screen, you'll see their photos and you'll see them on their videos here as well. We have with us Hermine Diebol. She is the chief of the Archives Management Unit, which is part of the Institutional Memory section at the Library and Archives. And also we have Cristina Giordano. She's the chief of the Knowledge Services Unit in the Library Services section at the Library and Archives. So thank you so much to them both for being here and sharing their knowledge today. I pass over to them to launch in. If you have any questions throughout the session, we will also get to those questions at the end, and you can simply pop them in the Q&A chat to the right of your screen. So I will finish there and hand over to you, Hermine. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Natalie. Thank you so much. And we are very pleased to be with you today. And we are going to see the content of the session. So we are going to start with tracing the legacy to give you some information on the League of Nations and on the United Nations. And after, we will give a definition of primary sources, what is the differences between archive, official documents, and publications. And we will detail some principal types of official documents. And then we will go to some demonstration, the first one of the UN Archives Geneva platform, and the second one of the UN Digital Library. So let's start with the first part. Today, we will be discussing about two multilateral institutions, the League of Nations and the UN. And because those histories of these two institutions are deeply interconnected. The League of Nations is often regarded as the UN predecessor, and we have the privilege of managing the documents and archives from both institutions here in Geneva, which reveal the continuities between their records. Let's start with the League of Nations. This organization was established in Geneva following the trauma of World War I with the mission of maintaining world peace. And as it is the first international organization dedicated to preserving peace and promoting cooperation among states, the League marked a turning point in the institutionalization of multilateralism. For instance, it created a permanent multilateral framework for member states representatives to meet regularly and discuss major global issues on equal footing. This seems to be a regular concept, standard concept today, but at the time it was very revolutionary. And sadly, despite the League's existence, it could not prevent World War II, and the League and the UN coexisted for a few months after the war until the League's dissolution in 1946, and is at that time where the League's assets were transferred to the UN, including the Palais des Nations library collections and also the archives.
So, despite the outbreak of World War II, the idea of an international entity in charge of pursuing peace and international cooperation was never abandoned, even during the conflict. And in particular, world leaders as the British Prime Minister Churchill and the American President Roosevelt were in favor of creating a new, stronger organization after the war and carefully planned for it. So this new organization that succeeded the League is, of course, the United Nations, whose founding document, the Charter, was signed on 26 June 1945 at the UN Conference on International Organization in San Francisco, and it came into force on the 24th of October 1945. At the time, the UN had 51 members, but Article 4 of the Charter clearly aims at universal membership, stating that the organization is open to all peace-loving states willing to accept the obligation and capable of carrying out the mandate set in the Charter itself. Today, with 193 member states, we can say that this goal has been attained, and the UN is the only true universal organization. Article 1 of the Charter also defines the mandate of the organization, which is rather large and includes maintaining international peace and security. Sorry, still a little bit back on the other slide, if you can go back. Solve international problems of economic, social, cultural, and humanitarian character, and promote respect for human rights and for fundamental freedoms for all. Next slide.
So the experience of the League of Nations left a foundation for building today's international system, which is held by the UN. And the UN inherited many agencies initially created by the League, like UNESCO, for instance.
So the United Nations was trying also to overcome what was the perceived weakness of the League of Nations and trying to create a stronger collective security system. And the idea was to avoid repeating a catastrophe like the Second World War.
And we will see that the League and the UN have common points. For instance, activities that were initially managed by the League were also continued by the UN, such as the publication of official documents. And we will see now how also the structure of the organs of the League and the UN are quite similar.
So indeed, if we examine the founding documents of these organizations, of the Covenant for the League of Nations and the Charter for the United Nations, we see that both really have a similar structure. The League of Nations had 4 main organs, and in contrast, the UN has 6 main organs. And now we are going to examine them one by one, and we will start with the Assembly. So, as you see, both organizations have an assembly, the UN called General Assembly. And in this organ, in the assembly, all member states are represented on equal footing, each holding 1 vote. These bodies have regular session every year, normally starting in September, and their goal is to discuss global issues and promote dialogue. Then we see that both organizations have a council. And in the council, the council has a more specific competence. The goal of the responsibility of the council is the maintenance of international peace and security. And is all in both organizations. It is composed of permanent and non-permanent members. However, under the UN Charter, the permanent members of the UN Security Council, which are the United States of America, now the Russian Federation, the United Kingdom, France, and China, basically the winners of the Second World War, dispose of a very important and unique power, which is the right of veto. The Security Council is an organ that can make recommendations on how to settle international disputes, but also has the power to resort to imposing sanctions and even to authorize the use of force to restore international peace. And what is very important and unique is that all UN member states have the obligation to comply with Security Council resolutions. Then we see that given these 2 main organs, there is also another important organ, which is for both organizations, the Secretariat. The Secretariat is the organ that performs the day-to-day work of the organization. It carries out the decisions of the main organs. And this daily work includes preparing, for example, the meetings of the main organs. So preparing their agendas, their program of work, and also publishing official documents in connection with these meetings. So far, very similar. Then there are a few differences. For example, for the economic and social field, we see that the League was organized by sections. You had functional activities were organized by section, while the UN has created a special organ, the Economic and Social Council, for taking care of the economic and social fields. Now, the Economic and Social Council is an organ that has more a role of coordination of activities. And in particular, it coordinates the work of the UN with that of its 15 specialized agencies, which are like the ILO, the FAO, the UNESCO, and etc. Then another important common point is that both organizations had a court of justice. So, and it's mentioned in the founding documents of both organizations. The Permanent Court of International Justice under the League of Nations was the first permanent international tribunal with general jurisdiction, and this work is continued today by the International Court of Justice, which adjudicates disputes among states and give advisory opinions on international legal issues. Finally, we see organs that are carried over the activities of the League of Nations to the UN. And these activities are related to the implementation of the 1919 peace treaties that had created a series of mandates for administering the former colonies and territories of Germany and the Ottoman Empire. So this, when the League was dissolved, these mandates were passed on to the United Nations, specifically to an organ called the Trusteeship Council, whose goal was to ensure that these so-called trust territories were administered in the best interest of their inhabitants. However, all trust territories have now attained independence, and as such, the Trusteeship Council has suspended its activities in 1994. Next slide.
So today we will focus on primary sources. So what are they? They are the documents that are produced by the League of Nations and by the UN. And the primary sources include unpublished material, which are the archives, and published material, which are the official documents and the publications. And each type of document serves a specific purpose. So we will start by examining the archives. So the archives are documents produced or received by an organization. It could be an individual, but in our case, it's the League of Nations or the UN, and they are documents produced or received during its daily activities. In the case of the League of Nations and the UN, these documents are often unique because they are unpublished documents. We can have letters, draft reports, or memoranda. You will only find them in the archives files. The archives provide evidence of activities which has occurred in the past, and they tell stories, they document people and organization work. The archives have been selected for permanent preservation because of their value as a source of historical or other kind of research. Let's see two examples. The first one that you can see on the left is a letter dated June 1922. It's from Marie Curie, the famous Polish and naturalized French physicist and chemist. She conducts research on radioactivity. She's well known for that. And in the League of Nations archive, we have this letter where she responds to the Secretary General of the League regarding his invitation to join the newly established Commission of Intellectual Cooperation. And we can see in this letter that she expressed that she is not certain to accept the position. The other example, it's a UN archives document, and it's a letter, again, from 1950, with comments from the United Kingdom regarding the drafting of the International Covenant of Human Rights, a different kind of topic. So today, we will not go further into the typology of archives, but it was very important to mention this type of primary sources, as you will encounter it in your navigation on the UN Archive Geneva platform. What we are going to do now is to continue to focus on the published document of the League and of the UN, and we will start with the official documents.
So here we will present a few characteristics of the official documents that you will find both for the League of Nations and the UN official documents. What you have to know about official documents is that they are produced to serve as the basis of work of the deliberative organs of the organizations. In the form of official documents, you will find reports, resolutions, and meeting records. These are the most important categories of official documents. These documents, as we said a little bit before, they are prepared by the UN Secretariat, and they are made available to delegates and participants in UN official meetings. So they are written for experts, for diplomats who attend official meetings. Because of this official character, because they serve as the basis for discussions, for resolutions, for examining issues, they are distributed for free in multiple copies, either electronically or in print format. Next slide, please. They also have some main elements that you will see on mostly all official documents, and this will help you identify them as such. For example, both for the League and the UN official documents, you will see that each is identified by a unique document symbol that you will find at the top right of the document. This is very important because once you have the symbol you have the key to the document, and it's very easy to retrieve it either in paper or now more and more in electronic format. Also, you have to know that this organization works in various languages. So they have official languages for their work. And for example, the League of Nations use for their works the English and French. The UN has 6 official languages: Arabic, Chinese, English, French, Russian, and Spanish. So in principle, official documents are published in all official languages. But what is interesting is that the symbol remains the same for all language versions. So once you have the symbol, you can also retrieve all the versions, all the various linguistic versions. Next slide, please.
So let's see an example of a League of Nations official documents. Here, the example we have, it's a document from 1930. It's addressing the concept of creating a European Federal Union following a proposal of the French government. At that time, the proposal did not advance within the League of Nations frameworks, but the ideas which are contained in the proposal were used as an important concept after for the formation of today's European Union. What we can see here on this first page of official documents is the document symbol on the top right, as mentioned by Christina. We have, of course, the title in the middle of the document, and we have the date of the document below the document symbol. And finally, we can also see the mention on the top left that the document was distributed to the Council, the members of the League, and the delegates at the Assembly.
And here we have an example of a UN official document. The official documents of the UN, they always have this layout. It's very typical. It helps you identify them as such. As you see on the left, we have the name of the organization and also its very well-known symbol, as well as the name of the organ to which this document has been submitted to, the organ that has examined these documents. Then here, to the top right of the document, we find this famous symbol, this unique identifier, which is always made by a string of characters, letters and numbers separated by slashes. Then after the line that you see, you will have the indication of the session of the organ to which this document has been presented to. So it's the 79th session of the General Assembly. And this document has been issued in connection to a point on the work program of the General Assembly for that session. So the work program for the session is called the agenda, and this document pertains to the point 123 of that agenda. So it's called the agenda item. It has a number, but also a title, Strengthening of the United Nations System. And then finally, a little bit further down, we have the title of the document itself, the Pact for the Future. So we can turn the page. And we will now tell you a little bit about what kind of official documents you can encounter when you do research and why they're important. We have selected 4 principal types. We have selected meeting records, resolutions, reports, and letters. So we will start with the meeting records on the next slide. Why meeting records are important? Because when you want to see what has been said, which speeches, which statements have been made at a particular meeting of an organ, it's in the meeting records that you will find this information. And you will also have a record of the action that the organ has taken as the issues of these discussions. However, you have to know that there are 2 types of meeting records. There are the so-called verbatim records, also known as procès-verbaux, from the French name of this kind of records. And verbatim records are the full first-person account of the proceeding of a meeting. Everything that has been said during the meeting has been literally recorded, word by word. Then there are also summary records, which are a condensed form of what has been said during a meeting, and they are usually written at the 3rd person. Why this difference? Because verbatim records are time-consuming and they are very expensive. So only the meetings of the main organs of the UN, such as the General Assembly, the Security Council, are entitled to have verbatim records taken of their meetings. Other organs, for example, the Economic and Social Council, they only entitled to have summary records. Now we have talked about meetings, so when issues are discussed, speeches are made, positions are expressed, and then normally what is the outcome of this discussion? It can be a resolution. Resolutions are extremely important because they contain the formal expression of the will of an organ as manifested in the majority of its component. Now, resolutions can be adopted with a vote, but if there is no opposition, they can also pass without a vote. Another important category that you may encounter are the reports. Reports are among the most common documents, and this is like the main way how organs get information about the topics that they have to examine. There are many types of reports and on a wide variety of topics. Among them, we must mention the reports of the Secretary General, for example, to the General Assembly, because these are the most authoritative ones. Then we are going to talk a little bit about the letters. We have seen the letters in the archives. So states can send letters, but they can also choose to use the form of a letter to transmit to an organ information about, for example, an outcome of a meeting organized outside the organization, or to transmit any other kind of information. And they can explicitly ask to have this letter published as an official document. So the letter will appear as a UN official document, as you can see here from the top of the document itself and from the symbol. So these are the documents that you can encounter when you study the deliberative activities of the organizations. However, the organizations, they also have another function, which could be a function more, we can say, of research and also of compilation of data. Data that, for example, can be statistics that are valid for the entire world. So this is a very useful also function. And normally, these activities is not reflected in official documents, but rather in official publications. And you can see that international organizations such as the League of Nations and has already had quite a production of official publications. For example, here on the left, you see the statistical yearbook of the League of Nations. Today, we have a statistical yearbook of the United Nations. The UN also published a lot of publications that about its activities is a way of disseminating and making the activity known. For example, here on the right, with the basic facts about the United Nations, which is one of the most popular UN publications if you want to have information about the organs, their activities, their members, etc. So it's one of the most popular. And on the next slide, we can see what are the characteristics of these UN publications. So they are not written for the expert, for the delegates, for the diplomats, but they're more aimed at making the activities of the organization known to the general public. So this is why the UN wants to popularize them and give them the widest possible distribution. And here you can find major studies, reports. We have seen some yearbooks, other statistical compilation, handbooks, and even periodicals, for example, like the UN Chronicle. Originally, publications were meant to be sold, so they were made for sale. You had to purchase them. But now they are freely, most of them are freely available in electronic format on the institutional websites of the organs that produce them.
Fantastic. Thank you, Christina. I mean, we hope it's been helpful so far to look at the different types of documents, official documents that we have in the archives and in the UN. It's time for a little quiz to see how you're understanding the content and to help you understand a bit more. So now you're going to see on the screen a document. And we're also going to launch a little quiz for you. So based on what you've heard so far, what type of primary source is this document? You'll see on the screen the document itself as well as the quiz. Is this an archives document? Is it an official document? Or do you think it's a publication? We'll give you a minute to reflect and to select your answer and click send. And it may show up in French on your screen, envoyer. So you click that and we'll see what the results are. Okay, so the results are coming in, but so far we have some people, 40% thinking it's an archives document and 60% say it's an official document. Please join in if you have the chance. And then we'll ask Christina and to answer that one for us. Okay, so far, most people think it's an official document. Christina, would you be able to answer that for us? What type of primary source is this?
It is an official document because you have seen the masthead, no, with the name of the organization. You have seen the symbol of the icon of the organization, the name of the organ. You also have seen the symbol on the right. So it's also a document that is not unique. It's been printed and reproduced in many copies so that the delegates can use it for their work. So for that reason, it belongs to the category of the official documents.
Perfect. We did have some people who did think it was an archives document. Hermine, is there anything you wanted to add about that to really make it clear what the difference really is?
Yes, in that case, as Christina said, it has been published, is for the work of the delegates, and in the archives you will find more unique documents that it won't be so formalized. It could be a letter, a memo, or a report, but with annotation sometimes and with a unique content.
Thank you both very much. So hopefully that helps you to understand a bit more about the types of documents we have. It's now time to look at, in practice, at some of the platforms where you can find these documents. So I'm going to pass firstly to Hermine, who's going to be sharing the UN Archives Geneva platform with us. Over to you, Hermine. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, so let's go to the practice. And we will start with the UN Archive Geneva platform because it's where you will be able to find the League of Nations official documents and publication. On this platform, in general, you will find the description and in specific cases, the full text of digitized documents, archival documents that are managed by UN Archive Geneva. You can see on this blue box on the left that we have 5 categories of archives that are preserved at the UN Library and Archives Geneva. But today, we will focus on the League of Nations archives. For you to know, that all League of Nations archives have been digitized after a 5-year project and are available on the platform. You can consult the full text of the archives, and that's a total of 14 million pages. So you have quite a lot of document to read. But today we will only see the League of Nations official documents collection. So clicking here, you will arrive to this page where you will be able to have access to this tree view of the official documents. We can see that these documents are organized in different topics. There are 4 topics. I will present them to you. And the first one is the institutional structure of the League of Nations. So here we will find the documents that are linked to the main bodies. So we have the Council, the Assembly, the Secretariat, but also the ancillary bodies and institutions connected with the League of Nations, and the financial administration, and finally, the bodies dealing with various League of Nations constitutional questions. Then we will have the documents linked to activities of the League related to the peace treaty. Sorry. So here we have the supervision of mandate system. We have also the protection of minorities, the protection of the Free City of Danzig, and the administration of the Saar territory. The third topic covers the efforts of the League in maintaining international peace and security. So we will have documents on disarmament, on collective security, on political dispute, and other political questions. And lastly, the last topic is on the functional activities of the leagues, which are quite broad. So you will find communication and transit organization, economic and financial topics, health organization, intellectual cooperation, and so on, until the last one. Let's start to consult one document to have an example. And let's say we want to see minutes from the Assembly of the League of Nations. You can see that the documents are organized by session. And in this example, we are going to consult the 11th sessions of the League of Nations, and we are going to go into the plenary meetings. If we go further to the minutes, you see we go down on the hierarchy, and at the bottom, at the item level, we will be able to consult the document. You will have this page with the description of the document. And if you want to see the PDF, you just have to click on the thumbnail, accept the copyright notice, and you will be able to download the document. What do we have here? We have the proceedings of the 11th session of the Assembly of the League, which took place in September and October 1930 in Geneva. You can notice that it's a document a little long. It has more than 220 pages, even in English, because we have the minutes of the meetings in another PDF in French. If we go down in the document, we can see that we have several speeches that have been indicated here. And if we go a little down, I want to show a specific example that was already mentioned by the Professor Tudor at the beginning. We can see here that we have a speech from Mr. Nicolae Titulescu, who at that time was the president of the Assembly. He was indeed a president during 2 years, in 1930 and 1931, and since 1921, he was a permanent representative of Romania to the League of Nations. Here, this proceeding of this speech, it's a good example of what Christina has explained as meeting record at the first person, a verbatim record, procès verbal. And we can understand here because everything is written at the first person. Allow me to express to you my sincerest gratitude for the very great honor you have just done. And that's because here we will find the speech of Nicolae Titulescu, word by word transcript in this document. Now that we have seen an example of a verbatim record, let's see another example of official documents. Here we are going to search within this collection. And for that, you have to select the collection under tree view. And then you go to the image carousel and you have to click on this button, Show All. When you do that, you will be able to perform a search only in the collection of the official document. After, you have to open this window of advanced search option, and you will be able to indicate the term of your search. Let's say that now we want to find a report, specifically a Secretary General's report on the topic of women. We are going to indicate the terms of the search, and we are going to search only in the title, so in the metadata of the document. Then we click on the search button to perform the search. We have a few results, and we are going to consult this document that seems to be of our interest. We want to download the document, so I click on the document, I agree the copyright notice, and then I will be able to read the document. Here we can see that this report is on the nationality of women, each from 1931. And it's interesting because this question of nationality of women, it's an iconic struggle of feminist organization in the 1930s within international organization, because most of national laws at that time subordinated a woman nationality to the nationality of her husband. And that created a dramatic situation during times of war or in case of separation. So here member states try to make some proposal to try to change the law in several countries. If we go back to the platform and we want to understand where these documents belongs to, we have the possibility to use the tree view to understand on which session, on which part of the official document we have found this result. You can also use the breadcrumbs here, and you will be able to see that this document was presented during the 12th session of the Assembly, and it's a document to work. I will finish here the demonstration of the UN Archives Geneva platform. Just give you some last information. If you want to go back to the home page, you just have to click on this house icon. And you have to know that you can always contact us. At the bottom of each page, you will find this Ask an Archivist button. If you click on it, you will have access to this form that you can fill, and from there we will be able to answer your question. Please don't hesitate. You can also contact us directly through the chat, which is here. And also, I encourage you to subscribe to our newsletter that you can go clicking on this sign up button here. You can leave us your information, and then you will receive our newsletter. The next one will be sent end of January. And finally, if you go on this quick links icon, you will find our help section page where you will find interesting information to perform search. And also you will have a tutorial to understand how to navigate the platform.
Perfect. Thank you, Hermine. So this was a great demo of how you can access the archives, many of the archives that we hold at the UN Library and Archives Geneva. We're now going to look at a platform for accessing UN documents called the UN Digital Library. And I pass to Christina for the demo.
Yes, thank you, Natalie. So as we have a specialized platform for League of Nations archives, there also exists a specialized platform for searching UN official documents and publications. This is called the Digital Library. And this is devoted only to UN materials. We can say that it's started out in the 1970s as a catalog for UN documents and UN publications, but it also had as other information. For example, here you can search how resolutions presented to the main organs have been voted. You can search for the speech of the delegates in front of these organs, and you also find other materials like the collection of the UN maps that have been digitized, or projects like the UN oral history devoted to recording people who held important appointments with the UN. However, we can see in the next slide that not everything that the UN has produced since 1945-46 has been digitized. You have to know that there is an important difference. As from 1993, the UN has started producing documents in electronic format. So from 1993, all UN official documents are born digital, and their full text have been attached to the metadata, to the bibliographic description of the document itself. However, from 1946 to 1992, not everything is yet available in electronic format. Only some categories of documents, the most important ones, have been digitized. Luckily, all the resolutions of the main organs are available in electronic format in the digital library from 46, as well as the documents of the Security Council and the meeting records and report of the General Assembly. But for other organs, this is the chances are that for the period 46 to 92, not everything is available in full text. This is because the UN next year will turn 80. So it's been, producing millions of documents since 46. Also because so far we only looked at the main organs, but these organs are assisted by a multiplicity of subsidiary organs that also produce their official documents. However, if you are what you are looking for is not available in full text in the digital library, don't hesitate to contact us here at the library. We will provide the contact at the end of the presentation, because in most cases, we are able to assist you because we scan and digitize the documents, and we can add them to the digital library on ad hoc request. And now we are going to see a little bit how the digital library looks like. Can you see my screen? Yes. Okay, that's good. That's the first start. So this is how the digital library looks like. It's very simple. You have seen the address here. And as the archive database, also here you find different collections. For example, you can search, if you already know what you're looking for, in the type of resources. For example, in documents or publication, or if you're looking for maps or other kind of data, you can also make your selection here. Or you can search, for example, for document of a specific UN body, for example, the General Assembly. But now, for the sake of this example, we are going to do a very general research, and we are going to look what we can find on the topic of multilateralism, which is the topic of our presentation. So we can enter the keyword here and then click on search and see what we retrieve. When we do this kind of search, you have to know that we are not looking into not yet in the full text of the documents if it's ready. We are looking into its bibliographic description as it has been established by specific UN staff, the indexers of UN documents. Actually, UN documents are described as books would be described in a catalog, but with some important differences. The indexing of UN documents includes some fields that are very specific for UN documents. So you will not find them for books, but they are very, very adapted. Everything in the UN Digital Library has been adapted to reflect the reality of the UN official documents. So we have searched in the bibliographic description and we have found quite a number of records. We can try to limit this research using the facets that we have here. For example, which allow us to limit, for example, by kind of document. If we want to see if there are resolutions that mention multilateralism, we can click here and we will see that we will reduce the number of records of results dramatically. And we can have a look, for example, at the first resolution that has created the International Day of Multilateralism and Diplomacy for Peace. Here on the right, when you see these multiple files, this is an indication that attached to this bibliographic description, you will also find the full text. So when you see this, there is the full text of the document possibly in the 6 official languages. So when we click here, we have a look at the description itself. So we have first some very general information. This is a resolution that was adopted at the 73rd session of the General Assembly that spans the years 2018, 2019, and specifically this was adopted in 2018. Then you have here the possibility of downloading the document in the language of your choice. And here comes the part where the indexers have done their work. And their work is very important because it helps you with your research. Actually, they solve a lot of your problem. So, for example, here they've clearly stated the symbol, the unique identifier of this resolution. They have specified the title. Then they also told you when was this resolution adopted. It was the 12th of December 2018. Was it voted or passed without vote? It was voted. It was adopted with this is the summary of the voting. It's already there. And it also tells you when this been voted. It was the 51st plenary section of the 73rd session of the General Assembly. Also, here you will find the links towards the documents that contain the draft of this resolution. So this resolution was presented in a basic text, but then maybe this text has been amended during the discussion. And here you will find how it was at the beginning. So you will have the links already to these other documents. Also here we find the famous procès verbal. So the meeting of the meeting record of the meeting when it was adopted. So here you have the link to that document. And here you find the indication of the agenda item for the particular session. So this document belongs to agenda item 15, which is the topic of the culture of peace. And if you click on this link, you can see other documents that have been presented on the same topic. There are, for example, quite a few. And I wanted to show you, for example, an example of a letter that has been sent by a member state to the General Assembly. So this is an example of, there are two identical letters that the permanent representative of Lebanon has addressed to the Secretary General and the President of the Security Council, because what they wanted to transmit a concept paper about establishing an institution, probably in their country, and they want to bring this information to the attention of the General Assembly. So they ask to have this letter reproduced as an official document. That the letter could have stayed an archived document, it could have been sitting there, but they asked to have been brought to the attention of the organ, and so it becomes an official document. And also here you can see that there are the subjects. So the subjects are not keywords. Each UN document is indexed according to a controlled list of terms. So the subjects are created by the librarians, and they are according to a certain form. By chance, multilateralism is a word that is reproduced in the thesaurus. In this thesaurus is this control list of terms, and it can also be used as a keyword. Sometimes there are other differences. For example, if you want to look at international days, there is this special form. And here, finally, you can have a look at the PDF. Also, you can change and see the language of your choice. So what we have done here has been a search that was in the description, in one of the fields that were in the description. But we can also enable, for example, a search in the full text of the PDFs, if they exist, if we to activate here this option, the full text search, and this will retrieve documents that have, like resolutions, that have this multilateralism also in the full text. If we don't want to see if it's a resolution decision, just what it's documents that mention multilateralism, we can remove that, and you would see we have a great number of results. So this is a little bit what I wanted to show you about the digital library and how you retrieve these principal kinds of documents that we have seen during the presentation, and the work also that is done to make this, to connect this document between themselves, and this is done by the UN staff members, the indexers.
Thank you so much, Christina. We hope that the demo of these two platforms was helpful for you. And we do have some questions about the two platforms, so I'm very happy to see those, and they're great questions, so we'll get to them in just a moment. On the screen, you see a few more links, and we will be very sure to share this with you so you can consult them. I'll just briefly tell you about them. The UN Documentation Research Guide is a really great place to, again, see the different types of documents. It's really clearly laid out, and so we encourage you, if you want to know more, to look there. We also have a range of research guides at the UN Library and Archives on various topics, from women in diplomacy to human rights to the Sustainable Development Goals to the history of multilateralism. So we have the link there as well. The Yearbook of the UN is no longer in publication, but the last one was in 2015. But this is a really great resource for looking at all of the different resolutions and decisions made by the UN's main organs. We also have the podcast of the UN Library and Archives called The Next Page. If you prefer to listen to podcasts, we have a range of conversations on different aspects of multilateralism with diplomats, with historians, authors, and also young activists. So that's a great resource for you as well. And we also have what's called Histories, which is an online video series that we created here at the Library and Archives to dive into some of the archives that Elmine was mentioning, some examples of that, key archives, and explain, the history of them and the evolution of multilateral issues. So please do take advantage of all these resources, and we'll make sure to put that in the email to you. But I think it's time now to get to the questions, because we're a little bit over time and we're conscious that you're staying with us. So thank you for that. Maybe I'll quickly, I'll go from the beginning. One question for Christina is, can we freely download and use the documents in the UN Library for our studies? So that's one question. And then to you, Armin, are there any documents in the archive that are digitized but are secret or not published? And is there access to them? So firstly to Christina and then Armin to answer those questions.
Yes, it is possible to freely digitize download the documents that are in the digital library. That's why they've been uploaded there. It's because people can have access. If there are some documents which are maybe linked to the topic of human rights, may have what we call a restricted status. So they may be documents that are not made to be to be distributed at the time, but they are really very few, and normally in that case it's clearly indicated that they are restricted and you will not find the full text. If you find the full text, you can download them for no problems.
Great, thank you, Christina. Hermine.
Yes, so regarding the question of the League of Nations archive, also we have my colleague Jacques who is answering them also. And so for the League of Nations archive, we don't have any secret files. Everything has been digitized and everything is available online. So be sure that you can consult them. Also about, I continue, Nathalie, with the other question.
Please,
yes,
go ahead. Yes.
Nicolae Titulescu, as Jacques mentioned, if you search the term Titulescu, you will find a lot of archives with his name because it was very well involved, as we saw in the League of Nations. We have also a part of the League of Nations archives. We have private papers, and we have, for instance, the private papers of the Secretary General of the League of Nations. But in the case of Nicolae Titulescu, we don't have his private papers, which will be really interesting. We hope they are well preserved in some place in Romania. But definitely you will find a lot of information on his activity. And the last question, if there is any personal notes in the archives on UN Assembly meeting, indeed you will find a lot of annotation in what is fascinating with archives, no? Because you have really the sense of the daily work of the person, of their reflection and how they go on with the work. And usually we say that it's a good complement to consult official documents because it's the official voice of the organization, and the archives because here you will have a sense of what is done really daily, more lively work, let's say, of the organization. I just want to finish to mention that with my colleague Jacques, we give a specific presentation on the UN Archive Geneva platform and on our archival collections because it's a broad topic. So if you are interested, we will be more than welcome to organize one for you.
Perfect. Thank you, Hermine, and also Jacques, who's answering in written form in the chat. Professor Tudor, perhaps you have a question or a comment as well before we end.
No, I don't have any questions. I hope that it was a very good opportunity for our students, and I hope in January I will also organize a study day with interested students, and will make practical applications of effective searching in the library and archive, same like you. Finally, I would like to personally, and behalf of the students, thank for this event, and we are very close to you starting today, and I hope we are very attached UN direction.
Fantastic. Thank you, Professor, for
Thank
inviting all
you
your
very
students.
much.
Thanks for all for attending, whether you're joining from Romania or there's also a few from other places as well here in Geneva as well. So thank you all very much. Please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, X, or YouTube. We have a lot of content and we hope that it will inspire and be useful for you. We'll also send the recording and the resources shared from today's session to you today. We wish you a very happy Human Rights Day. Know your rights and your future. And we wish you a good holiday season as well. Until next time, take care, and please contact us if you have any questions. Bye from us all here. Take care.
Thank you very much, and happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you too. Bye.
Bye. Bye, Christina.